and welcome to the road to the 2020 NFL Draft. I am Andrew Wilbar. For the next few weeks up until the draft, we're going to go position by position, team by team. We're going to start breaking down different prospects in the draft, different fits in the draft, fits for certain teams. And I want to get you guys involved. So if you have any questions, comments you want to make on a player, on your team, on just a fit that you see happening, something you could see happening in the draft, be sure to put it in the comment section. And if you got a question, I'll answer that in my next video later on this week. So definitely, if you have anything about the draft, be sure to put that in. Today we're going to be looking at the top 5 picks in the NFL draft. We're also going to be looking at my quarterback rankings and breaking down the position at quarterback. May give you a couple sleepers to look at later on in the draft as well. So let's get started today. The NFL draft is expected to go on April 23rd through the 25th, despite this COVID-19 pandemic. I don't know exactly what we can really expect from it. I think we could see a lot of surprises because teams can't bring players in for pre-draft visits. A lot of pro days were canceled. That could have a big impact on the draft. I think players that didn't perform well in the combine or didn't perform at all could really be hurt by this. And also those with medical red flags. And that also fits in with the quarterbacks, one of them being Tua Tagovailoa. Just posted a video a few days ago. That 10-second video of him looked pretty good. It's going to be interesting to see how high he goes. Right now, I have him in my latest mock draft. You can check it out at behindthesteelcurtain.com/fanpost. You can find it there. Find it in the Pride of Detroit fan post section as well, a couple others. But some of the SB Nation websites, you can check it out. I have Tua Tagovailoa going to the Dolphins in my latest mock draft, but I do have them trading up to number 3 with the Detroit Lions. There's a lot of rumor swirling with the Washington Redskins. Could they possibly take Tua Tagovailoa? I don't see it. I think that the front office really likes Dwayne Haskins. I think that it wouldn't really be the best move for them. I think we saw what Arizona did with Josh Rosen going to Kyler Murray. It seemed to work out for them so far. They seem to be trending upward. But I think Haskins brings enough. I think they need to just get a better supporting cast around him. We saw Terry McLaurin last year. That was a good pickup. But we'll see what happens with Trent Williams. He wants traded. I think he will be traded at some point. And we'll see what they get in return. But they have needs all over the place. I think the wisest thing for them is to take the best player available, which is Chase Young, in my opinion. I think that he is the best player in this draft by far. A lot of people want to talk about the last 3 games of the year where he didn't have any sacks. But really, if you look at a lot of the linebackers / edge rushers in the league that you see today, each one that they go through streaks, where they're hot, they're cold. If you look really closely, he was still playing really well against the run. In the game against Michigan in the second half, he did get some quarterback pressures. I think we're just overthinking it a little bit. He's going to be strong against the run, and he's going to be wreaking havoc against quarterbacks for the next decade. So I think that's a good fit for Washington. So the only thing that could get them out of there is possibly a trade up, but I think the wisest thing for them is to stay there. Now, Detroit, on the other hand, it's interesting because the Lions fans seem to be very split on what they want to do. Some that I've talked to really want Tua Tagovailoa and just start the rebuild, but they just spent a bunch of money in free agency. Again, it's very arguable that they overpaid. I certainly think that Vitae, the tackle they brought in, was not worth 5 years for $50 million. But we'll see what happens there. But it looks like Bob Quinn and Matt Patricia are trying to win now, probably to save their jobs. They need to win now. And drafting Tua Tagovailoa would not do it this year. So I think the most likely scenario is that the Dolphins will trade up to 3 with the Lions because the Lions don't have anything to lose. If you trade back, you can take Jeff Okudah at 3. You can take Isaiah Simmons at 3. They're great players. But the only other team you have there is the Giants. And you're guaranteed one of those 2 players if you're just sliding back 2 spots. And there's no guarantee the Giants are going to take Isaiah Simmons. They need offensive line help. They could take Mekhi Becton, the mammoth offensive tackle from Louisville. So, we'll see what happens, but it seems like Bob Quinn likes high floor guys. He doesn't like taking super high risks. So it wouldn't surprise me if he stood at 3 and took a guy maybe like Derek Brown, who's going to be a good player, but I don't know if he has quite the potential that Nakuda or Simmons does. But I don't think they're taking a quarterback. I think quarterbacks just about out after we saw what they did in free agency. They seem to be all in on trying to win now. So I think that would be a really good trade for both sides. The Dolphins, they also spent a bunch of money in free agency, but they still have Ryan Fitzpatrick. They have Josh Rosen. They can afford to let Tua sit a year as a redshirt, let him get 100% healthy, and they'll be contending in 2021. We saw the good job that Brian Flores did as the head coach last year for them. He did a fantastic job towards the end of the year. Saw them beat New England at the end of the year, which as a Steelers fan, I loved. That was amazing. Really, they filled a lot of their needs in free agency. So, they could still use pass rusher. They need help at offensive tackle. They need a running back. But even if they give up one of those first-round picks, I think they're okay. I could even see them giving up, pick 26 and a third-round pick along with the 5th pick. That would be good for the Lions if they are not taking a quarterback. You'll still get a game changer on defense, either Akuda or Simmons. And then later on at pick 26, you can take offensive line, running back, either linebacker or corner, whichever one they don't take at 3. All options would be open. Maybe they trade back again. So we'll see what happens there. But right now, I think Joe Burrow is a lock number 1, the Cincinnati Bengals. I think Chase Young is, I'm about 90% sure he goes to the Redskins. I know there's some Redskins fans that want to trade back, which, again, they have a lot of needs as well. This is one of the reasons why they're drafting 2nd overall. So it wouldn't shock me if they were able to move out of there. But I think the best scenario for them is just to stay at 2, take Chase Young. And then we'll see what they get for Trent Williams if they get some draft picks. And then with the 3rd pick, that's where I expect the action to happen. I don't know how many trades to expect this year. With the GMs working from home, does that make it more difficult to manipulate a trade? Or, maybe if they are allowed more time on the clock this year, which I haven't heard anything about that, but if the NFL were to decide that, maybe that allows GMs more time to manipulate trades. But I think that the most likely spot to see the action start is pick 3 with the Lions. If they're not taking a quarterback, move down. Miami needs that quarterback. Take Tua. Don't hope that he just falls to you, because he's not going to. Some team is going to trade up. So I think the Dolphins will do that. Then pick 4, it gets a little bit interesting because the offensive line play comes in here. They did bring in Eric Flowers. They didn't get rid of Nate Solder. So, maybe they want to put off offensive line until round 2. Dave Gettleman likes his hog mollies. And Mekhi Becton's the biggest guy in this draft. He is, 6'5", 360 or whatever, So, he seems like a guy that Gettleman would really like. But I think one of the best players in this draft is Isaiah Simmons. I think he'd be the best player for them. We've also heard that they want to trade down, but Giants are a team that usually trades down. So that'll be a little bit interesting. If a trade doesn't happen at 3, I definitely think you'll see one at 4. But right now, I would say the most likely pick is Isaiah Simmons. That's who I gave them in my last mock draft. I'll have another one coming out fairly soon, in the next week and a half probably. We'll come out with 4.0. Right now I'm on 3.0. So we've covered the top 5 pretty much. That's pretty much what I think is going to happen. If you have any extra thoughts you want to add, maybe you're a fan of one of those teams, tell me what you think, what you would like to see your team do, what you think your team will do. Be sure to let me know about that. We'll discuss whatever you guys want to talk about in the next video coming on later this week. So, anything, really anything that draft related, especially with your team. Be sure to mention them. And then the other thing is the quarterback rankings that I'd like to get into today. At quarterback, obviously we have Joe Burrow, #1 quarterback. Most people have as a #1 quarterback. Saw the year he had at LSU, the record completion percentage. Some people want to compare him to Tom Brady, a mobile Tom Brady. I don't quite see it. I like Mel Kiper's comparison to Tony Romo. That seemed like a good comp. I don't think he has quite the ceiling that a Tua Tagovailoa or a guy I really like, Jordan Love from Utah State. I don't think he has quite that potential, but I think he's going to come in immediately and contribute for the Bengals, who need to see some wins. Zach Taylor needs, I think, at least have a mediocre season this year if he wants to keep his job. So we'll see what happens there. I don't think Joe Burrow is gonna say I'm not going to Cincinnati. There was talks about that. He said he'll go if they draft him. So I don't think you need to worry about employing an Eli Manning. I think he will go to the Cincinnati Bengals, and you have to have a quarterback in that division. With my Steelers, with Big Ben, we'll see how he is when he comes back. You have Baker Mayfield, who I think will have a nice rebound season if they put the right pieces around him. And then you have Baltimore with Lamar Jackson. So I think they have to get their quarterback. No taking Chase Young, no trading out of the first pick. I think you got to take your quarterback. They seem high on Joe Burrow. I think that's pretty definite. I don't think it's a pick you can go wrong with. Just because I said he doesn't have as high of a ceiling doesn't mean he is a bad pick. I still think he can be a really good tier 2 quarterback, a quarterback that can take you a lot of places. But he's not like the next Patrick Mahomes, okay? He doesn't have the highest potential in this class if you're comparing him to a Tua or a Jordan Love or even a Justin Herbert if you're into him. So he's definitely a #1. If I was guaranteed 10 years of perfect health, really, I would probably put Tua above him. Todd McShay said the exact same thing. I have to agree with that, just because of what Tua has been when he is healthy. Nobody's really been able to slow him down. Such a very precise, accurate passer, the quick twitch. He really is a left-handed Drew Brees, like a lot of people are saying. I think if he is behind an offensive line that's solidified, has a couple veterans, I think that he can have a long, successful career. But the interesting thing is we also have to think about, how much did the receivers at Alabama make him? I mean, he has 4 wide receivers that are going to be in the NFL. You have Judy and Ruggs, which we'll get into in a later video. Plus you have Devontae Smith, who went back, who I thought should have come out, even though the class is stacked with receivers. And then you have Jalen Waddle, who I think is going to be a first-round pick next year. So he did have a good supporting cast, but I believe he is going to be really a generational type quarterback if he stays healthy. I believe that if I was a GM, I would be willing to take the risk on him. And, I don't think, just because of how the medicals have come back, I don't think he's going to slide like some people were saying right after his injury. Some people were saying, well, let's slide him down to New England at 23. He's going to be going in the top 5. I don't think we need to worry about him sliding down. I think he solidified himself as the #2 and maybe on some people's boards the #1 quarterback in this draft. So we have the top 2 down. At 3 is where it gets interesting. We have Mel Kiper and Todd McShay. They have the bet on, who's going to go first, Love or Herbert. That's another thing. If you have a preference, tell me in the comment section. Which side are you on, Love or Herbert? Which one do you think is going to have the better career? Right now I have Jordan Love way ahead of Herbert in my rankings. I have Herbert, I believe, like at 23 on my rankings. 22 actually. I have him at 22 on my rankings. I have Jordan Love at #9 on my overall rankings, and my #3 quarterback. He's not Patrick Mahomes. Now, I love Patrick Mahomes the year he came out. Now, part of it was just that he went to Kansas City. That obviously helped him. But I think that with Jordan Love, he needs to find a good system. Carolina brought in Teddy Bridgewater, but I think that would have been a good place for him with Matt Rule and Joe Brady, who I think is an outstanding offensive mind. But we'll see what happens there. But I think Jordan Love will have the better career. But on who goes first in the draft, I actually think it's going to be Justin Herbert because the Chargers, he seems like a guy that the Chargers would draft, kind of this guy, kind of boomer bust guys. He's from Oregon, so, on the West Coast. That seems to be more of a logical pick for the Chargers. They've seemed to have more interest in him than they have in Love. I know that there have been talks they may trade up for Tua as well, but I think Justin Herbert would be a decent fit for the Chargers. The thing that I just am not sure about with Justin Herbert is, can he have good enough anticipation in the NFL? You see him and stuff, you watch the tape, and, his awareness is okay. He has the great arm. He's usually accurate, but he doesn't have the great instincts that a quarterback has. The mental quickness, the ability to go from his first target to his second to his third, getting through progressions quickly. Just little things like that. Whenever I watch Oregon play and stuff, he never really impressed me. Whereas with Jordan Love, he didn't have a good year, but he did lose 9 starters, his top 5 receiving entities, 4 offensive linemen, and a new coach he had this year. So I think that Love has the higher upside just because of what we saw the year before, and what we see with Love even this year. He still had those jaw-dropping moments, like, this guy has something special here, okay? There's something different about him. Whereas with Herbert, we're saying, well, there's something different about him, but we can't put our finger on it. We're not sure what is it that we like or don't like about Herbert. Whereas with Love, you see that special ability, just the natural ability to drop passes in there so beautifully. And that's why I have him right above. We saw him at the Senior Bowl and at the Combine. Herbert won the Senior Bowl MVP and all of that. But I think overall Herbert can be a solid quarterback, but he's going to be a streaky quarterback in the league. Maybe rich man's Jameis Winston, maybe. That's a comp I'm thinking of kind of right now. But I don't think he's going to be that high-end generational type quarterback. I'm not saying that Jordan Love's the next Patrick Mahomes either, but there are similarities. He's a gunslinger. We see the accuracy. When he is on, he is on. He has that special playmaking ability in him. And I think if he gets into an offense like Mahomes was able to in Kansas City, I think he's going to be a really good quarterback in this league. We're going to get a couple more here real quick. To finish out my top 5 quarterbacks, I do have Jacob Eason. He's another guy kind of in the same boat as Herbert. Could never really get too hot or too cold with him. He has maybe the best arm in this class. Great arm. Matthew Stafford could be a good comp. There have been some character issues kind of just with his personality and stuff like that. But as a player, he's very inaccurate at times. He also struggles to go through progressions quickly. I think some team may trade up towards the end. In my last mock draft, I had the Buccaneers actually trading up 15 spots, trading up to 30 with the Packers to go and grab him. He can learn behind Tom Brady, and he seems that would be a good fit for him and Bruce Arians, who likes to chuck it downfield. Eason would be a really good guy. Could bring in, develop him. Maybe in 2022 he can take over. But that's going to be interesting. I think he's a late first, early second round pick. I wouldn't have a huge problem if he went in that range, and I think that's where he will go. After that, that's where the quarterback class really gets tricky. Because then you're getting into the Jake Fromms. I'm not a big Jake Fromm fan. Doesn't have the arm strength. Maybe he can be an Andy Dalton. Maybe a low end starter, but I'm not going to use my first-round pick to draft a low-end starter. In my first-round pick, and even my second, really, I want to get players that are going to have a huge impact on my franchise. He could be a guy good for a team that's maybe in a transition state that could come in. He'll either be a really good backup in this league or maybe a low-end starter. But I don't think he's going to be winning you Super Bowls. I think guys that you can bring in, develop. Cole McDonald, I like from Hawaii. One of my favorite players that is starting to rise a little bit is Tyler Huntley, the quarterback from Utah. He finished in the top 10 in the Heisman voting. He had a great year behind honestly, a really bad offensive line at Utah. Now, Zach Moss, it was nice to have him in the backfield. We'll get into him in the running back video coming up later on this week. But he didn't have the best offensive line, not the best group of receivers, but he still put together a really good year. He has running ability. If you can get him late day 3 or even undrafted, bring him in. I think Khalil Tate is another guy from Arizona. We all thought he could possibly be a Heisman candidate at the start of last year. Never turned out, but he has kind of a Lamar Jackson skill set that I think you can bring in, see what you have there. He can bring you something as a runner, and if he doesn't turn out at quarterback, try him out at receiver. He has receiving skills as well. So, those are a couple guys that I think you can bring in later on. Steven Montez from Colorado has a good arm. I think those are all guys you can bring in that have starter potential. They still have a lot of developing to do, but if you have a quarterback, a veteran quarterback, maybe like the Steelers, a team that it's really, there's a lot of arguments going on of whether, the backup quarterback situation is good enough or not. Mason Rudolph, had a very up and down year last year on and off the field. Duck Hodges, we saw what his ceiling was. He had a couple decent games, but, I think the position could be upgraded. Maybe bring in a Tyler Huntley or a Khalil Tate. Bring in a couple of these guys, even just have them battled out for a roster spot, see what you have, and just work with that high potential. A couple other guys, James Morgan. I haven't looked too closely into him. I hope to in the next few days. Nate Stanley. These are all guys that you can bring in that still have a lot of developing to do, but could potentially become starters down the road. So honestly, I think overall it is a deep class. But I think there's a lot of polishing to do with these quarterbacks as well. So I think a lot depends on what system these guys go into. So we hit the quarterback position today. We also touched on the top 5 picks in the draft. We'll look at the next few picks in the draft. We'll also look at the running back position, maybe a couple other positions, and also answer any of the questions that you give for me in the comment section. I hope to hear from you. We'll see you next time. Be sure to like, subscribe, and share. Get the word out. We'll see how this goes, and hopefully we'll have a lot more videos for you between now and the draft. So until next time, we'll see you later.